Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Moel Sumidai from the Clinical Trial Vanguard, and I'm here with Mumbi Kairu from the Pamoja Research Institute out in Anaheim, California. She so graciously came to visit me here in Times Square to discuss FDA's most recent guidance on diversity, equity, and inclusion in clinical trials. Uh, Mumbi runs a study site that focuses on diverse patient populations and can speak and represent that group of patients. And so I'm going to ask Mumbi some questions about the FDA guidance and what she thinks about it. Um, and welcome, Mumbi. Pleasure to have you
Pleasure
here.
to be here.
My first question to you, Mumbi, is do you feel the FDA's guidance on diversity in clinical trials sufficiently addresses the specific cultural and socioeconomic barriers faced by the African American communities and other underrepresented communities in clinical trial participation?
Well, thanks, Mo, for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. Um, let me let me first just say it is great that FDA has finally appreciated that we need diversity in clinical trials, and I am very passionate, so I may talk maybe more than I should, but I will try. And let's just even come up with the background. Why is it important to have diversity in clinical trials? Um, at the current moment, we have participants in clinical trials, about 70 to 75% that are Caucasians. So that leaves about maybe 25 also to non-Caucasians. But in the population in the country, we have about 51, 52% Caucasians. So you can, and then in clinical trials, you have about 5 to 15%, and it's very rough percentage that actually participate in clinical trials from the minority groups. However, if you look in the population, it's about 48 to 49% in the population in the United States. So you can see it's about maybe two-thirds to a third. So there is a need. And why is it even important to have this diversity in clinical trials? Clinical trials is where we get the innovative treatments. And we all know, and I'm not a geologist, but we all know that different populations metabolize medication differently. So if you just have a sample of the majority that metabolize medication is a different way, when that medication comes into the market, it work for as the 50% that were represented. The other 50, it's not going to work. So we are missing a very big population that actually need. And when I say need, I do this every day. And I see our underserved population. So to come to your question, it is not enough. I am glad that we're here, but it's a starting point. But it is not enough. It does not even come close to enough. Let me just, you see their guidelines. That right there is a problem. They are guidelines. That means I am encouraging the sponsors, the big farmers, to do something. So he's policing them.
Mhm.
What are the goal, and how do you know we are getting to that goal?
Mm.
Right? So that alone it is a problem. Number two, because it's a guidance, it does not come with specific ways of how are we going to get there, you know? And we all know to be able to get from A to B requires community participation, it requires support. And number three, FDA being a part of the government, it does require policies. So it's not effective, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm. So, how effective, speaking of the effectiveness of this guidance, how effective are the suggested community outreach measures in your experience, and what key strategies might the FDA have missed in its guidance document?
Um, where do I start with that? Let's just start with the basic, because I want to bring this to the level where I think it should start. Let's just start with trust. Now, let me bring this home. Let me just lay the table. I have
Lay it
been,
out.
yeah, let me just lay it out.
Okay.
I have been doing this the last 15 years. And in my clinic, which is a small clinic, The first thing you do is build trust. So I have built trust with my patients for the last 15 years. Some I've seen for those 15 years. So when they are coming knowing me at my first name base, Mobi. Hi, Mumbi. They bring their families. So we have that trust. We are a community. So then there is this trial, and I think it's a very good trial. It's a very good clinical trial. And my patient, I talk to them, I tell them, you know what, it would be very, very helpful. And so they say, you know what, because I trust you, sure, sign me up. I sign them up. And then once I sign them up, they get it done, right? But then what happens? We never hear from them because there's no long term follow up as to what happened after that. Not to mention, I am so fortunate that I'm even right now, you know, not to mention the historical mistrust. That is just the basic that I have to build up. What is the historical mistrust? Look at the Tuskegee, right? It's always the bigger academic institutions that number one get most trials. We do not come to the clinical level where we actually have these patients go get care, right? So if it's bigger institutions, that means I'm going to get someone who doesn't look like me, who doesn't know me, but because Mombi said please go, Mombi is gonna go. I'm gonna go because Mombi said. But what if Mombi was actually doing it? Isn't there more trust? Isn't there more buying into the work that is actually that we're doing? Um, let's alone that. Let's look at the historical part of the mistrust. What did it all begin? Should we even go and talk about reparations? Is that somewhere we want to go? Because it is from the slavery to all the healthcare injustices that still remain today.
And systemic injustices that still remain today.
That still remain today. So to actually say that the guidelines will take care of that, it's a joke. Now, even humor me and tell me how do you do that? Do we start from the historical and then come down? And if we don't start from the grassroots to that community clinic, to that small clinic that is seeing that patient has built that trust, what are we doing? I don't understand.
And so also not many minority physicians are participating in clinical research. We've got the whole catch-22 in pharma where you have to have experience to get into research, and if you don't have experience you can't get into research, and a lot of those community physicians don't have that. And so it's the FDA guidelines provide recommendations. You have to have training and the competence to run clinical trials, but yet pharma still focuses on that experience, right?
The big academic structures do most of the clinical trials. Now, as you say, if I come to somebody who looks like me, who understands my culture, who I have seen for years, then that is where I'm actually going to start building that clinical trials and doing it. But if I go right now and I'm clinical trials naive, the big farmers will not look at me. But yet, that is where we should start. And I'm so grateful that you brought that up because there's so many clinics out there that would like to get into it. But then when you get to it, you have the patients are willing, but then you don't have what is required. You don't have the clinical trial experience. And they're not even helping you to fund you and support you to do it because they're not going to even look at you in the first place. So we need more people that look like the socially underrepresented communities to get into the clinical trials in the grassroots to actually start talking about diversity. Yes.
Absolutely. And is cultural competency training alone enough to build the trust with the diverse patient populations? Or are there other more significant factors the FDA should have focused on? I mean, you sort of touched on this, that it's not enough, right? Like cultural training isn't enough. It has to do with connection. It has to do with experiencing what your patients are going through. And that trust that you mentioned, right?
Well, just humor me.
Yeah.
Because I do these things,
Yeah.
right? How am I going to learn a whole culture in a 30-minute slide? Because we do this. You get a slide.
I don't think enough training can even get you there.
No. We do slides. It's a slide. And again, it is self-policed. I'm going to sign a piece of paper saying, I did the training. which is a few slides. And I don't know how I'm supposed to learn about a whole community from slides. Number one, who did these slides? Do you know? Number two, other than just slides, what else are we doing to actually get our clinical trial staff to be competent? Are we even working with people who are in the trenches, as I'm going to call them, to actually, they know already. So you're not teaching them. They are part of that culture. You're not training them. And even if we're going to train, let's put our support, our money where things are. Don't just give me slides. So right there, I don't know. Maybe you have an idea of how we can do this, but I do not know. So that alone is, I don't want to call it a joke because it's a starting point. And I really, really want to appreciate what FDA has finally realized. I really, really want to say it's important. But let's not make this the end. It is a starting point. So cultural competence does not come with slides. And also who, how, where, and what materials are we using? Are we even, because if we can get actually people who look like my community, who can go out there and talk to these patients, right? Talk to, and not just patients, when it comes to actually socially underrepresented, you're talking about even people who are homeless. So, and don't get me there, because even the way we collect data, it is different. Because there's one thing I'll tell you, I wish I could do. You know how you come and see your provider and they write a script and they say, go take this extra Y medication. You take it to the pharmacy and you get a bottle and you take your medication. How I wish I can write housing on a prescription and you take it to a housing pharmacy and you get housing. We are not doing anything because when we talk about culture, there's so many things that come with that culture other than how you look.
Absolutely. It's the way you live. You know, how can you adhere to your medications? How can you continue to come to your study visits if the societal disposition that you're in prohibits that or is sort of against that from you going to the office? You have to work a job. You can't leave. You don't have the luxury to go to a study visit. You know, those are the kinds of things that are facing those communities, right?
Talk about those barriers because number one, if it's in a big academic institution, there's transportation there. That's number one. Do I have childcare? Can I get support to actually do somebody to take care of my children when I go for this clinical trial? I don't have childcare. What about my job? Can I actually tell my employer I'm participating in a clinical trial, so pay me for these hours? Or am I at risk of losing this job, the only job that I have, that will put in a roof over my head? All right. Can we even think about mobile clinics?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have mobile clinics that are actually doing this, finding patients where they are in their own community,
Mm-hmm.
being done by people who look like you and me? Can we support community workers who can actually go where those patients are and find them? What about home visits? Can we do home visits? And also, I want to acknowledge that there is the virtual part that now FDA has said we can do virtual, which is a
Decentralized
joke.
trials.
Which is a joke. Let me tell you why.
Mm.
Right now, telehealth is the law of the country. But when you come to a patient who, for lack of a better words, I'm going to say what my patient tell me. I have an Obama phone. How much data does that Obama phone has? That's number one. Number two, how about the you call the gigabytes or the interconnectivity of where the patient is? Sometimes it's too, you can't even hear what the patient is saying. Put the video now, you've lost it.
Mm-hmm.
So what support are we doing so that then all these barriers, all these socio-economic barriers are actually taken care of? So there's more needs to be done.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Data plans are limited. They can't have access to the type of telehealth
Yes.
that is usually associated with decentralized trials. That is one of the concerns that has been brought up, is that a lot of those patients don't have those data plans, right?
Yes.
And that's an issue that needs to be addressed also, because it seems to me that like pharma in the past few years was and saying, oh yeah, decentralized trials is a way to access those communities, but the reality is there's a lot of socioeconomic factors and challenges I need to be overcome.
And until we do that, and that's what I'm saying, I really don't want to say it's a bad thing. We're having this conversation. That's where we start. But more needs to be done. We need to actually support these efforts. So yeah.
And so we talked about data collection strategies. And in your view, does the FDA provide enough structural support for sites like Pamoja, like yours, to enhance participant recruitment and retention from diverse populations?
Let me say, the answer is no. But let me actually give you a little bit of background. Right now, when you talk about data correction, what do we correct? Age, gender, race. We've been here for the last maybe few minutes talking. What have we been talking about? Race. Is that all diversity
No,
is about?
no.
Right?
It's life. It's all of it that comes
Exactly.
along with it.
Exactly. So when we talk about diversity and data, what are we correcting? And how much is that helping us? Now, how are we correcting it? Because if you just come and tell me, okay, Mumbi, we need minorities, or from this age to this age, but you have not actually looked at lifestyle, because that's part of diversity. And are you supporting me enough, as I was saying earlier, to have people who can go to the community, to actually go and get those people who are homeless? Because homelessness is part of the data. Do we correct that? And then in that case, how are we going to come with these innovative treatments that we all need, that is all inclusive? We want to be inclusive. What are we doing about it? So data, it comes from the pre. Okay, again, let's go back to what I was saying, that these medications are needed for everybody, right? So if we do not correct the pre data from those people who are socially disadvantaged, from the homeless to the people who don't look like you, people who don't talk like you, that's a pre data, because that is what guides the pharmaceutical companies to actually say, you know what, we need this treatment. There is a gap here, right? So if we don't know where the gaps are, or we are doing a part of the problem, when it comes now to doing the innovative treatment, that is where we are ending up on the other end with partial treatment that are not serving everybody. So the data we correct, we have to ask ourselves the pre data, the ongoing data, and do not get me on the post data, because that is where now I get more motivated. For example, patients come and they actually get into the trial, right? Once the medication comes to the market, do we loop around to go and say, you know what? We know these people are socially disadvantaged. For example, there was a viral medication that came into the market, and for the treatment, it was about $100,000 for the cost of treatment. Okay, even when actually the generic came out, it was over $20,000. Now, even if there's a copy, how much is a copy? And even with that copy, can I actually get it from my insurance? Because most people that are under, socially under disadvantaged, they're in medical, they're in Medicare. Some of them have a deductible, especially Medicare. Medical may not have, or Medicaid. I'm in California, so I
It's
call it
Medi-Cal
medical.
in California.
So Medicaid, let's just be more inclusive.
Yeah.
Medicaid. So Medicaid, you may not have a copy, but then to get it approved by Medicaid, you have to try so many things and show that you have failed. For example, on average, the patient I see in my clinic, they have at least 2 to 3 different medications. Well, maybe there could be one medication that will cover for those 2 to 3, but because that one medication is very new, more expensive, then you have to put this patient into 3 generic medications other than what is innovative. So if I really participated in this clinical trial, can we have a way to loop around and say it works so well for you more, so you know your insurance is not approving it, or you cannot afford the copay, we'll provide this medication. Are we looping around?
So what's the point of including those patients if they can't even access it post-market?
Thank you. Well asked.
What's
I
the
couldn't have
point?
asked better than that.
Right?
What is the point? And also, that is why, and even if it's not me, let's say, for example, and it's very sad because some of, mental health, but I also do appreciate that clinical trials are in everything. You may have an oncology medication, and I may say, you know what, I may not make it. But there are things, and especially in African American communities, that are more than me benefiting. Let me tell you something: pride in the community. When I say that, I just feel like crying. It is, I participated, my community, it is part of this bigger picture of bringing new, innovative treatments that will help generations. Pride alone will make me do something.
Mm-hmm.
But how am I know that it's going to help my people?
Mm-hmm.
It's because there is that looping around that somebody is going to come and say, you know what, because this community did that, we're going to give back. And so we are not even empowering this community that we so much need. That so much needs us, by the way. We are not empowering them to say, you know what, it may not be because of me. I would love to have it me, but I know it's going to help my generations.
Mm-hmm.
Sense of pride. It's better than anything. What are we doing about it? So don't make me start going.
You're
We'll
about to
be
make me
we'll,
cry with
we'll,
this.
we'll be here for the
Yeah.
next. Yeah, it is it because I see patients who come, and these patients are saying, you know what, I'm not even doing this for me, you know, but if it's gonna help, I am okay. Then you say, you know what, all the medication have side effects. You know what, if I can tolerate, I'll be okay, because if it can help somebody, I will do it. That is just sense of pride that is goes beyond I am doing this for me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not forget that.
Is there anything else you'd like to add for the audiences that you felt we might have missed in this discussion?
Let me say in summary, they're just very basic things that we need to do. We need, number one, to go to the grassroots and find those patients where they are. And how does that happen? The community clinics, the small clinics. I run a small clinic more.
Mm-hmm.
I may have maybe about 3,000 patients, but I can tell you my patients look like where they live and who they come and see. If we start there, then diversity starts from that small group, other than the big academic institutions. That's number one. Number two, can we not just think about who it helps? Can we look back? Can we have long term? And that is actually one thing I would say. Can we have long term engagement? So you're not coming to me because then you look like a predator. Let's not be predators to our patients, please. Because when you come to me when you need me, because of you have a clinical trial, but then you don't come back and loop around and tell me, Mumbi, this is what you helped us do. And for that reason, as part of the community, this is what we are doing. Until we do that, we go to the grassroots. Diversity will just be a goal, an idea that we'll never get to. But again, I am thankful. I'm really, really, truly thankful that FDA has started this this first stage. Let's start from here. Let's work together. Let's bring those clinical trials to the community, to the small clinics, and let's get investigators who look like those communities, not because they have experience. Let's train them. Let's put some money into these programs so that then we can say we are finally doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Mumbi. Everyone, this is Mumbi Kairu, who is the owner of
Yes.
Pamoja Clinical Research. Thank you again so much for coming here to visit us. And we look forward to continuing this very important discussion about DE&I in clinical trials.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.